All right, everyone. Billy Carson versus Wes Huff. Regarding this situation, I just want to give my thoughts. Right. Let's start off with the facts. Right. Billy Carson lost the debate. Now, why did Billy lose? Was there any foul play? What's really going on? Is his career over? I just want to give a few thoughts. Right. Um. So, I've been following Billy Carson for maybe a year, maybe two now. I'm not too sure, but I'm rather new to Billy. Um, but let's just say to a degree, you could call me a fan. I do very much like Billy. I do agree with many of his takes. But over the years, since I've been kind of following some of his content, there have been moments, there have been statements where I myself have fact checked him and noticed flaws in some of his logic. Um, yeah, in some of his presentations. And I understand this simply because of, well, when it comes to certain sources that Billy brings up, I've read some of those sources and I know sometimes he's misremembering, sometimes he's misquoting, sometimes he remembers his conclusion but doesn't remember which source he got it from. And these are things that I've been saying since before he decided to step into the debate arena. I remember telling my wife, I'm like, Billy wouldn't do well if he ever stepped into the debate arena, not because he doesn't know what he's talking about, but because there is a stark difference between the skills necessary to debate and those necessary to give a presentation or a lecture. There's two different muscles being used, those are two different skill sets. So if you walk into a debate thinking that you just have to give a presentation, you're going to lose regardless. And this is also why I stayed out of the debate arena myself, because it's possibly a flaw that I have, right? um, in that I don't care as much. You watch my content, I don't care that much about citing sources. And it's more so because I understand that when it comes to presentations, no one really cares. Most people that listen to a lecture, that listen to a presentation, most people aren't going to go back and look up your sources. So I personally find it as unnecessary work. As a person, I don't try to, I do be as honest as possible with my presentations to only share things that I actually believe in, I actually know, I actually think. Um, I can't speak for other teachers. Now that works well with a presentation, that works well with a lecture, that works well with a speech, that does not fly in a debate. And in fact, many of the things that might be credible in a lecture, that might be credible in a presentation, don't fly at all in a debate. For example, I myself am a mystic. So a lot of my encounters directly with God, directly with the divine, are my source for why I believe certain things, right? I do have scholarship, but the scholarship is supporting evidence. That's not why I believe what I believe. I understand that should I step in a debate forum, none of my mystical experiences are now valid. So when we're dealing with the topic of a debate, you're going in there not just to have an open dialogue around a topic. No, it's this side says this side says this, and it's not necessarily about who's actually right. It's about who can present their material better in the moment, and possibly who can destroy the other's stance better than the other. Debating has more to do with winning than it has to do with ending with a truthful conclusion. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you have to understand the nature of the game. So what I believe is, just from what I've seen, looks like Billy was not prepared for a debate. Like I said, two different skill sets necessary in order to be a good debater. Now, I'll tell you, Mr. Wes Huff seems like he was well prepared for Billy. Now, do I think there was any malice? Yeah. Yeah. Um, just because I remember seeing Mr. Huff in a few clips over the years. I'd seen small reels and clips of him. And from then, it looks like he's been waiting for a moment to finally debate Billy, because I believe he saw the same flaws that I saw. So going into the debate itself, Billy was going in unprepared, and his opponent was well prepared, not just for the topic, but well prepared to exploit all of Billy's flaws on camera. And look, I have no complaints. It was masterful. It was done well. I'm not even mad at that. That's what you want to do if the topic is a debate. That's how debates are won. You learn your opponent's weaknesses. Debating is the same as fighting. Know your opponent's weaknesses and exploit them, because at the end of the day, debates aren't ruled by logos. They're fueled by ethos. They're fueled by credibility, meaning it's the measure of who has more credible sources backing them up and who looks more credible at the end of the debate. That's really what you're going for. So I honestly, looking at the clips now, at the time of me recording this, the full interview, the full debate has not been made live yet. I only have available to me all of the clips that Mr. Huff has been posting. Now, this is why I say that there is some malice here. And I understand why there's some malice, and I'm going to talk about that briefly, is because the end result of winning the debate isn't just saying, I beat him in a debate. Everyone associated with Mr. Huff, the group of friends, former friends, the associates, I don't know all the people, sorry, I don't mean any disrespect, but the end result, the presentation of the clips, even leading up to it, isn't we simply beat him, nice job, I won. It is we are destroying your credibility to end your platform. That is the goal. The goal isn't winning the debate. The goal is destroying his credibility as a person overall. So yes, I say there's some malice in there. So why is there malice? Well, Billy, think about the topic of the debate, has made a lot of claims and stances regarding Christianity and the Bible. So he's kind of been kicking the Christian hornet nest for a very long time, and for the last several years has really gone unchecked. This was the perfect moment. It was a strategic attack to completely destroy Billy and his credibility as a win for the Christian community. And I'll tell you this, the cease and desist thing, that is a weird situation. That is a mishandling of the loss of a debate. I'm just go ahead and say that. But I understand it to a degree. All I can say is that he walked into trap after trap after trap. Agreeing to do that debate when you've never done a debate, you might not have any training in debate. You walked into a trap. That's all I can say to you, Billy. So I do want to give credit. Mr. Huff is very much intelligent. He's much more strategic than I think even the Christian audience knows. Because one of the clips that I saw, which kind of proved this to me, and this kind of backs up what I'm saying about debates aren't necessarily about who's right. It's about destroying the credibility of the other or simply proving that your side is better to the audience. There was a moment in one of the clips where they're talking about if the Bible comes from older sources, that there's older texts that the Bible is plagiarized from. And Mr. Huff asks Billy Carson, he says, what are some texts that you believe the Bible copies in Genesis, in the Old Testament? The topic was about Genesis. And he says the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Atrahasis, and a few others. And this is the strategic part. This is masterful debate right here, right? Perfect skill. He asks him to describe, to give a summary of the Enuma Elish. Now, I believe if Billy had any training in debate, he wouldn't have answered that question, because I've read both texts. And if I was going to prove to the audience, I think you just need to watch The Great Debaters, Billy. If you're going to present to the audience that the Bible is taken from older sources, I wouldn't use the Enuma Elish first. What I would go for, I would ignore that completely and say, well, honestly, the one that gives more evidence to support that the Bible is taken from older sources is actually the Epic of Atrahasis. That's the word for word plagiarism that's a lot easier to see. And then after you've gone through the beat by beat, play by play, that is the correlation between the Epic of Atrahasis and Noah, oh, that's an obvious presentation. Anyone who's read the Epic knows that it's 1-to-1, that this very much is the precursor to what we now know as Noah's Ark. Anyone who reads it can see it. And then the Enuma Elish and maybe the myth of Adapa, those can be supporting evidences. Right? But that was masterful. The fact that he asked him about the Enuma Elish and didn't ask him, and again, I'm only going off the clips. He might have asked him in the full debate. Full debate isn't out at the time of me recording this. The fact that he didn't ask him to disclose the summary of the Epic of Atrahasis is wonderful. If I'm trying to prove that Billy is this maniac just making stuff up, that's what I would do. Because there's very few things in a summary of the Enuma Elish. Because this again goes back to what I was saying. The audience, for the most part, is not going to go back and read it. You can tell them to go read it for yourself all you want. The audience, for the most part, is not. They're relying on the presentation. So I've read the Enuma Elish. I see similarities. I've read the Epic of Atrahasis. That is very much 1-to-1. There's other myths and other legends. If I was sitting in Billy's steps, and I'm thinking it is upon watching the clip. So this is fresh thoughts. This is right off the dome, right? And the topic is, well, where with that, like I said, I'd start with the Epic of Atrahasis. I'm bringing up the Enuma Elish. Let's say I started like Billy. You know, there's the Enuma Elish, there's the Epic of Atrahasis. He says, could you give me a summary of the Enuma Elish? I said, actually, I will not, you know. That one doesn't actually give enough the evidence on its own. What does prove my point a bit better is the Epic of Atrahasis. So I'm going to give a summary of that one instead. And then after going over it, look, then you can back it up using the Bible, pointing to how credible the Sumerians are, how they are the descendants of Shem, the culture of Shem, the son of Noah himself, the ancestor, the Sumerians being the ancestor of the Hebrews, right? Trace all of that back, use the biblical timeline, work with it. Because the presentation that you're going to get if you don't use the information wisely and if you don't present well is that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm all jumbled. I'm all over the place. This doesn't make slight coincidence is the traps that you fall into. Your sources and your presentation, or more so how quick-witted you can be, matters more than if you think you're right or if you know that you're right when you're going into a debate. So as far as the debate goes, Billy got crushed. And I've said this before. I knew from the jump, Billy's not going to do good in a debate just because of the way that I can tell by the way that he presents that he very genuinely did research on a lot of this stuff a long time ago. And because he's done research on it a long time ago, he formed his opinions, he formed his conclusions a long time ago. And it's not even about whether those conclusions are right or wrong, because in a presentation, in a lecture, that doesn't matter. It matters in a debate. Because you end up saying that you got something from the Sinai Bible when it's actually the Gospel of Barnabas. And then you have to deal with whether or not the Gospel of Barnabas is even considered a credible text. Those are pitfalls that you run the risk of. Now, if we're just giving a lecture, all of that stuff is valid. It's as valid as I am confident when I'm giving the material in a lecture. As long as it sounds like I believe it, the audience they don't fact check. They don't read. Most audience members, like I said, they're not going to go back and look. But yes, this very much was a very strategic attack from the Christians to get rid of one of the pillars in the I left church and I'm still spiritual type of community. So they're taking it as a Christian win. Honestly, y'all picked somebody who y'all did a good job, but anyone who knows Billy and has studied or watched any of Billy's lectures knows that he's not a debater. Now, I wish he knew that he wasn't a debater, or if he had friends that could tell him that he wasn't going to do good at that, maybe coach him a little bit on debate. Like I said, jokingly, watch maybe the movie The Great Debaters with Denzel. You know, a little bit of help going into something like that. Because if you've never done debate and you only have 24 hours, you're setting yourself up for failure. So I'll say this again. I agree with Billy on a lot. When it comes to him presenting his material and sometimes the sources that he used, some of the logic that the logic that he uses at moments, it's off. Let me just say that directly. It is off. For the most part, he ends up at the right conclusion or around the right conclusion. But that, again, does not matter if you're going into a debate. So if they do a rematch, Billy needs to be prepared. He might need to go and reread. He might need to go and refresh himself on some of where he got some of his sources from, where he came to some of his conclusions at, because where you got it from in a debate matters more than that you got it. Because in a debate, something that you thought was common knowledge could very well be the thing that's used to make you seem non-credible, to make you just seem like a whack job with a microphone. It could be something as simple as, oh yeah, they say Mary Magdalene, she the jar that she poured over his feet was made of alabaster. And they're like, okay, what book, chapter, and verse was that? And you're like, I was not prepared for book, chapter, and verse for something I thought we already knew. But that's jarring enough to make you look like you don't know what you're talking about. If you're going into debate, you got to be prepared to debate. It's, again, an entirely different skill set. So I feel like I'm repeating myself a bit. So yeah, let's see how this all plays out. But that's just my 2 cents on the topic. All love. Y'all be blessed. If you're interested in what I got going on, caveofmystery.org. Until next time, y'all be blessed. Later.